welcome to the Finest Women in Real Estate. This is our second show, and you may be asking yourself, you don't look like one of the finest women in real estate. I'm Steve Matley. I'm happy to host today. But I'm joined by one of the finest women in real estate and a couple of our finest resources. The Finest Women in Real Estate is an amazing program. It's a great company and a wonderful concept founded by Marie Antoinette Waite, and we're going to talk today with some of the people that are involved with her and what she's doing in this new movement in helping to market and promote professionals that are related to the real estate industry. To my right, I have Pauline Woelky. She is with United One Realty.
Correct.
Is that right? You are the owner of United One Realty.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And Pauline, how did you get involved with Finest Women in Real Estate?
I got involved because Marie reached out to me and asked to have a meeting, and that's how I was lucky that she, called me up, and we sat down and talked about our goals and personal life, and I loved her passion, and so that's how I got involved.
Fantastic. To Pauline's right, we have Michelle Limon, is that right?
You got it, yep.
She is a mortgage loan officer with CMG Financial, and she's one of the finest resources. So there's finest women in real estate or the real estate agents. Finest resources are the people that provide the services that the real estate agents need to rely on to get their transactions done. You provide funding for people that are looking to purchase homes.
I do.
And tell me about how you got involved with Finest Women in Real Estate, Michelle.
Well, I too met Marie, and her goals and visions were very aligned with mine, very parallel, and I wanted to join the movement of changing the perception of women in real estate communities and the information and knowledge base. So I am very happy to be on this with her.
Fantastic. And next in line we have Jonathan Preston. Now, Jonathan Preston is a business attorney, but he specializes in the construction and the real estate realm of the business world, the transactions. Jonathan, obviously you show that you don't have to be a woman to be part of this organization. How did you get involved with Finest Women?
Well, I've been handling business-related disputes, a lot of construction and real estate matters for years. I've been practicing law for 20 years, and several years ago, Marie Waite reached out to me for legal reasons to get my opinion on on a number of related topics, and so she's asked me to participate. I'm more than happy to, and so I hope I can contribute to this.
Fantastic. And I know you've done a lot of work with helping Marie legally getting her operation up and running. Finest Women in Real Estate is actually a marketing company that specializes in real estate.
That is true.
So I want a couple of topics we want to talk about today. One is on the seller side, getting your home ready to sell. Everybody thinks, okay, getting home ready to sell means run out to Home Depot, buy a bunch of paint, and cover up all the things so people don't see how you really live. But there's more to it than that. So in that realm, though, is it a good idea to just go and completely redo your entire house into a new entity, Pauline, before you list it?
No, it's not necessary. It really depends on each home of what work needs to be done. Obviously, a nice, clean, basic, neutral colors, those things really helps sell a home. But there's a lot of things that need to happen before putting your house on the market, and part of it is cleaning up the home, getting rid of the clutter, taking your personal photos down. When people walk in a home, they want to see themselves in it. They don't want to be focused on who's living here.
So you're really taking the home and turning it back into a house.
Correct.
It's depersonalizing it.
Depersonalizing.
Which makes sense if you're selling to other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And also, I always get a termite report before the house gets listed to make sure that that it's all clear. But if there is work that needs to be done, it's already handled before you're having a offer or contract, and you already know possibly that you already have $1,000 repairs right there in the beginning.
Which is something that will be required anyways during the transaction. So if you do get out ahead of time, you kind of know what you're looking at before you start.
Correct. If they ask for it in the contract, yeah, they have to get it taken care of.
Okay. Michelle, when it comes to preparing, we don't usually think of talking to the funding people, the lenders, when we're trying to sell a home. We think about that when we're buying a home. But there are some things that if we don't talk first with the people that provide the funding, we could get ourselves into a problem or not be able to sell the home. Share with us some of the issues that you've seen that come up because sellers didn't do the proper steps.
Well, I'm a partner to a lot of my real estate professionals. So what I do is I typically ask for a preliminary title report to see what liens are on the property, to see what we're dealing with. Are there any solar or leased property that's attached to the property that might be hard for a lender to take on that new lien? So just because you want to sell your house doesn't necessarily mean that what you have on it or attached to it is going to be financeable. You might have a condo that's in litigation, and we need to know that. And those are things that absolutely affect the new lender going into lien on that. So that's what I partner with the realtors, to make sure that we have a financeable property, unless somebody's going to buy cash, which is probably, what, 10% of the transactions.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the majority of them are financed options. So we just need to make sure that we have a financeable property.
Okay, and that gets into a little bit of Jonathan's realm, because you mentioned a couple things like HOAs going into litigation and the solar, and we're actually going to hit the solar issue in detail in our next segment. But Jonathan, in that realm, you've probably been on the tail side of transactions that have gone south. And you
Yes.
can probably tell us some ways that sellers can avoid getting themselves into that problem.
Often you find that sellers will sell a property or list a property without knowing what's on title. And some of those things that they'll think are on title would be just the first deed of trust through their initial mortgage lender. But they may not know that there might be an IRS tax lien, there might be an EDD lien, there might be a child support lien. It's imperative that a seller know that those liens have to be resolved. Your title company is going to request a statement of information, which is a broader search than what is normally just informed by a buyer by the seller to the agent. And so what I usually end up having is a seller coming to my office trying to get out of a transaction, unfortunately, when they discover that there's not going to be any net remaining funds available to the seller.
Okay, so you're saying that they would sell the home and they wouldn't make any money on it because they got to pay everybody else back first.
That's correct. On their final HUD-1, it would be showing that there's zero net coming back to the seller.
Okay, and I don't want to assume that we all know all these real estate terms, so can you quickly explain briefly what is a lien?
A lien is basically, could be a statutory lien, basically a requirement that you pay certain funds. It's an interest in tangible or real property.
Okay,
And
so basically somebody has a claim to your property, at least in part.
Yes.
As
It
if
could
they
be
were
through
owner.
statute or it could be through judgment. It could be voluntary. A voluntary lien would be like a deed of trust or an equity line.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about things that we don't consider as a seller. So let's say that we've got an open house and for some reason the seller happens to be on the property, people are looking through, and as people are looking through, they're talking to potential buyers, and they say a few things that lead those potential buyers into thinking that they're working a deal out, that there is some kind of an oral agreement, but it's not in writing yet. Is that
Yes.
binding?
Absolutely not.
Not at all? Okay.
No, this is very common. It's basically transactions that deal with real estate have to be signed by the party to be charged within the statute of frauds. So it's a basic law.
Okay.
And so,
Okay, Michelle, have you seen problems with those in lending? Have you ever had an issue with an offer being rejected because they think something else already been accepted? Or
Sometimes it comes up. I have buyers that become very disappointed because they're super excited that they think their offer is going to get accepted, and they get what's called verbal acceptance from
Right.
both parties, knowing that the signed paperwork is going to make its way through DocuSign, which is just an electronic form of signatures. And during the time that they're waiting for that to happen, something else happens. So then they're calling me saying, no, we're not going to open escrow after all this happened and that happened. So it does become pretty touchy on whether or not we had a fully, agreed upon acceptance. Sometimes it gets tied up in text messages and it gets tied up in emails, and then I think we go beyond the verbal point of that. But I'm not an attorney, and that's where I have to advise all parties that you need to seek out legal counsel.
and Pauline, when this kind of thing happens, they usually are yelling at you, the agent. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. I don't. I don't say anything to my clients unless I have that signed piece of paperwork. So if the other agent says, "Oh, they're gonna accept your offer," and you never know, 30 minutes later they get an all-cash offer, they haven't signed the paperwork, the seller's going to do what's best for them, and so it's very important to make sure you have everything in writing.
All right, we're going to come back in just a few minutes. I want you to stay tuned because we're going to actually hit that solar issue when we come back and talk in detail about how long-term solar agreements can wreak havoc on transactions between buyers and sellers in real estate. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the finest women in real estate. We're glad you're joining us again. I want to reintroduce you to who we have around the table today. We've got a great conversation going with Pauline Woelky from One Realty. We have Michelle Limon. She is a mortgage loan officer with CMG Financial. And we have Jonathan Preston, Esquire. He is a business attorney. We were talking a little bit about getting homes ready for the sale, both legally and physically, before the break. And an issue came up that was mentioned about long-term solar leases. And I think this is something that a lot of people don't realize is a problem until they get into the problem. Obviously, solar is something that is probably advertised as a great feature of a home. But there's some quagmire you can get into if there's some long-term contracts. So, Jonathan, I'll start with you this time. Tell me what your experience has been with issues coming up with these long-term contracts.
Sure. Most of the long-term solar contracts deal with the leasing portion of solar contracts, not so much as the buying. If the previous owner actually owns the system, you don't really run into a dispute when he decides to sell the system to the new buyer because he can set the terms that he wants. What you're dealing with is when you have an existing solar lease that may not be the best of terms for the new buyer. And if the buyer has done his homework, sometimes they'll try and require that the equipment be removed from the property or that the seller actually buy out the terms of the lease, which is very expensive, can run into $20,000 to $30,000, which then that has to be passed on to the buyer somehow. Sometimes it's difficult finding who actually has the lease. Sometimes it could delay closing because you're dealing with an assumption agreement. Maybe the terms of the lease of the buyer's credit are not creditworthy for the actual lender who currently holds the lease. So these are issues that are just common in this. It's a new area of law, I will say, because we haven't had so many solar leases within the last few years as we do today.
Okay, and Michelle, obviously this is going to affect the buyer's ability to qualify for certain amounts of loans, or now they have two loans to qualify for. One is for the solar, one's for the home. Share with us a little bit about some of the problems that come with that, especially in light of the fact that in California, solar is becoming mandatory on every house, and it's going to become a bigger issue.
It is actually an issue for buyers purchasing because the new lender that's coming on board is taking over that property. And if there's solar on there, it depends upon what type of solar. So there's many different types of solar. You can have a PPA, which is a purchase power agreement. You can have lease solar. You can have owned solar. So that goes back to the preliminary report. What type of solar do we have and how is it put onto the property? Is it financed through the property taxes? Is it just leased on a monthly basis? So how it affects the new buyer of the property is not so much as it affects the lender. Are we going to lend on it? Mm-hmm. And some of these companies file a UCC filing, which is a lien subordination. A lien position for them. And obviously the new lien holder, or the new loan is not going to take more than just first position. So we have to identify, are they going to subordinate that? Are they going to remove that? Is that going to be paid off? And what are the terms and conditions of whatever that lease is? So it does affect it. And if it is a lease, the buyer then has to qualify with that monthly payment in their debt ratios as well.
So we have to buy less house now, maybe.
They could possibly, absolutely. So we have to take whatever that monthly payment is, which generally is the same payment from the seller to the buyer. It doesn't typically change. But we do have to know about that. We have to put that into the debt ratios. It could make or break the deal.
So it sounds like this can bring up every problem under the sun, so to speak. Pauline?
Literally.
You're on the front lines. You're dealing with the buyers. You're dealing with the sellers. Mm-hmm. You get it from both sides. If you have a house and you look up and it's got a nice array of solar panels on there, what process do you have to go through? What questions do you have to ask? What do you have to work through in order to make sure you don't have these landmines come up?
Right. Well, the first is what type of solar it is. So, for instance, when you have Hero and they're using their property taxes to pay for that solar, that changes, their income, what they can qualify for. It changes, if they can even get a loan with the Hero. Most lenders now want that to be completely paid off, and that's a big problem with sellers. They got these Hero loans or Hero program with their property taxes
Okay.
5 years ago, and now the lending platform has changed, and they won't lend on those homes with the Hero.
Okay, so real quick for our viewers who may not be familiar with the language, explain real quickly, what is the HERO program?
The HERO program allows home buyers to be able to do energy efficiency on their home. And what they do is they have it in their property taxes, and then that way they can have it as a write-off as well. So
Okay.
there's many different ways. I've just came across a transaction, which I was really surprised, where they actually used the HERO to pay for the lease payments for 30 years. And then the solar system was leased, it wasn't even owned. So there's so many different arrays of
Okay.
things that can happen.
So on a long-term lease, the current owner is getting tax deductions or tax rebates back on that? Is that how they're paying for that?
No, it's tied to their property taxes.
Oh,
It's part of
property taxes,
their
okay.
supplemental property taxes. So
Okay.
their tax base now is higher. So.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But since you can write off your property taxes, that's one way, the benefit that they started with the HERO program. But
Okay, and Jonathan, when we have these kind of issues, say we have what it sounds like with this HERO program, you kind of use the tax base and you can spend it on anything for energy efficiency you want. So we could probably replace windows and do solar if we wanted to, is that right?
do windows, you can do your AC, you
Okay.
can tankless water heater, the solar. So yes, you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, John, does that add another layer of complexity? Let's say they did this to HERO and they did multiple things. Let's say they did windows and they did their AC and they did the solar, but only a component of that's a long-term lease on the solar.
You're correct, because you have a HERO program. Let's say the loan that's going to be paid off through the property tax might be $45,000, $50,000, of which maybe 25 might be attributable to the solar. Now, as the buyer, are you supposed to pay off the entire 25? Does that factor into the sale price? Are you going to offer an additional amount of money commensurate with the current fair market value of the solar? But HERO is broad. A reputable contractor will only use it for energy renovation services. It's another topic where some of the money actually goes, but that's not for today's discussion. But.
Okay, it gets a little too complicated for our time, is that right?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. All right, so I want to go back to Michelle real quick, little off the solar topic. Right now, home prices are going crazy. California, welcome to the land of overpriced real estate. What does that mean for buyers trying to buy homes? What are you seeing becomes the problem?
I talk about this a lot amongst my real estate professionals. Where we're at today are fully amortized payments, principal and interest payments, at a lower interest rate than where we were at 10 years ago, with approximately the same purchase prices. And what we're having problems with today is qualifying, because people took these same purchase prices with higher interest rates, but they were interest-only payments 10 years ago, so the payments were much lower. So right now we're starting to see a lot of buyers being completely maxed out with these purchase prices, and the fear of where are interest rates going. Should I buy now? Should I wait? And if I wait, rates are supposed to go up, but if I wait, property might stabilize or go down. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. There's a lot of waiting right now to kind of figure out what we're going to do. I have no idea what the feds are going to do come September, if we're going to have a rate increase or not. Past performance is obviously indicative of the future, and it says that we are. But if Trump has his way, that might not happen. So we'll see. We're all kind of very volatile right now to see where this is going to go.
Yeah, and I've heard several economists talk about where the market, if it's going up, if it's going down, if it's neutral. And one thing I've learned about economists, they're about as reliable as weathermen. So, now, Pauline, you're on the front lines again with these, with the buyers and the sellers. What do you get is the feeling? What is the attitude towards whether our market is? Are people rushing to get homes before they get priced out? Are they waiting because they think maybe it'll top and come down? What are the buyers and sellers doing out there?
Well, I work in the Temecula Valley area, so each market is different. And right now I see a little shift. So I feel like it's a stable, it's a great market, but with the interest rates increasing a little bit, I do see homes sitting on the market a little bit longer, and our inventory is higher than it was, several months ago.
But that was an historically low inventory, though.
It was, yes.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah.
so we always have to compare where we are versus where we were, and yes, it's higher inventory, but we were really almost out of things.
My biggest advice when someone's going to purchase a home and they are qualified, not to worry too much about the sales price, but can you make your payment? Is that what you're comfortable with? That's my biggest advice to someone who's buying a home that's going to sit and wait it out or not wait it out.
Okay. So that's good advice. Find out if you can even make that payment before you even look into it. So we're going to wrap it up for this segment. Don't go away. We're going to be right back, and we're going to get some final thoughts from each of our panelists today. Don't go away. Welcome back to the Finest Women in Real Estate. I'm your host, Steve Matley, for this segment. I am joined today by Pauline Woelky, real estate agent with United One Realty, Michelle Limon, she is with a mortgage loan broker with CMG Financial, and Jonathan Preston, our business attorney specializing in real estate and construction issues. What I want to do to wrap this up today, we've had a great discussion. We've talked about how to get ready to sell your property, both physically for the property and making sure the legal issues are all cleaned up before we do that. We've talked about the problems of long-term solar leases and what that can cause in a transaction. And I want to wrap it up with just a general idea from our experts here. They know a lot of stuff. And what I want you, each of you, in just about 30, 45 seconds, give me your very best tips for a buyer or seller in the real estate market today. Go, Pauline.
Okay. For a buyer?
A buyer or seller, what's
Yes.
your best tip?
For a buyer, get qualified. Get completely qualified, so when you're going out there to shop, you're not wasting anybody's time. You know what you're qualified for, and you can look in that market. So
Do most buyers know what they're qualified to buy?
Absolutely not. So definitely get in contact with the loan officer and get approved. Get all the paperwork up front to them right away, so they can look through everything, and you can feel confident that you're going to be able to purchase, and it's very exciting. For a seller, my biggest tip is to definitely do all your pre-work as far as the prelim, termite report, get your house ready, clean, in order, and also hire a great real estate agent that's going to help you sell your home.
Someone like yourself.
Yes, maybe.
Or one of the other finest women, yes. Michelle, what is your best tip?
Well, I deal with a lot of buyers, not so much sellers, yes. Right? Unless the sellers are rebuying again. My best tip for buyers is to get what Pauline said, completely pre-approved. So a little thing that we do is we actually don't just pre-approve you, we send you completely to underwriting. So when that underwriter approval comes back, you know for sure that you're getting that loan and that you can purchase. So the myth out there is that people think that they're pre-approved and that they can go buy a house, but pre-approval just means that the loan officer has looked at your paperwork and says that based upon what we've disclosed, we should qualify. But it's not until the underwriter actually stamps that approval letter that you are fully approved. So take that one extra step and get that done.
Jonathan, what's your best tip?
My best tip for a seller is to know their property and their own personal situation before entering into a listing agreement. Make sure that they are able to perform timely, that there's not going to be any issues, and discussing legal problems ahead of time if you have any within a real estate attorney, and then actually hiring a real estate agent is the best advice I can give you. But I've had too many sellers having to try and get out of transactions because they're not able to perform for one reason or another, which could have been avoided had they simply known what issues they faced before entering into that listing agreement.
Okay, fantastic tips. Take those to the bank. Make sure you made notes of those. It's been great having all of you on here. I want to thank each and every one of you. Pauline, thank you for being here. Michelle, Jonathan, we hope to have you back. We're going to see you, I think, in future episodes. For those of you at home, we want to thank you for joining us so much. It's been a pleasure coming to you today and sharing these ideas with you. Hopefully you found at least one thing that you can use to help you with better real estate transactions. For Finest Women in Real Estate, remember, it's not just for women, and we discuss real estate, but it's real people talking about real life. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to tune in next week.